Welcome to the Compendium. Today, on our very first episode, we're covering Io, a cursed priestess from Greek mythology. This video will contain Persona 3 spoilers, so consider yourself warned. First, let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. If you were to pronounce Io's name in Greek mythology, it would be pronounced Io. Since this will be a video that focuses on her story, I will be pronouncing it that way, despite how Yukari says her name.
Ew!
This is also a rule that I'll extend to every name I'll pronounce in this video. However, considering I don't speak Greek, I may screw up a name here or there. If you notice that I do screw one up, please let me know in the comments. Io is the initial persona of Yukari Takeba. Persona 3 runs on a tarot card system where each protagonist is represented by one of the major arcana. Since Yukari belongs to the Lover's Arcana, so does Io. Her strengths lay almost entirely in magic, with agility being the next closest stat, according to her maximum level stats in Persona Q. Her specialty is in healing and Garu magic. In the real world, however, Io is the name of one of Jupiter's 4 moons, named after the very myth that the Persona 3 Io is based on. Let's get started with that story, shall we? Io was the daughter of a man named Inachos, the first king of the city of Argos in Argolis, Peloponnese, Greece. Although stories differ on who her mother was, most sources would say it was Melia Argia, a sea nymph, daughter to the titan Okeanos, known as both the titan of the sea and the sea itself. Io is also referred to as a nymph herself in many stories, so having Melia as her mother would make sense. One could argue that through this union, Io has a close tie to the ocean and water, since some myths differ on whether Inachos himself was either a mortal man or a river god himself. For the sake and simplicity of this video, however, we'll just think of him as another mortal, like us. Io lived in Argos, of course, as a priestess of the goddess Hera, and it was believed that her father was actually responsible for bringing the worship of Hera to Argos in the first place. One day, Zeus noticed Io and lusted after her, as he would with any beautiful human being, man or woman. Zeus was just a horn dog through all of Greek mythology. In a popular version of the tale, she initially rejected all of Zeus's advances until her father threw her out of his house on the advice of the oracles. She was then turned into a heifer. Quick note for those who don't know, a heifer is a female cow that has not yet born a calf. This is where the story forks in the road a bit. Some stories say that Zeus turned Io into a heifer to hide Io from his wife, Hera. Other accounts say Hera turned Io into the heifer upon discovering her husband's treachery. While I like the idea of Hera turning Io into a heifer out of spite, especially considering Io was her priestess after all, the Zeus angle has a bit more story to it that makes it just interesting enough to make me decide to stick to that interpretation. So Zeus transforms Io into a beautiful, white-skinned heifer to hide her from Hera, and of course it doesn't work. Hera, in all her deviousness, after figuring out what her husband is trying to get away with, begs Zeus to give her the heifer as a present. Zeus, probably still not aware that his wife is onto him, goes along with it since he has no reason to refuse. It's at this point that Hera sends Argus Panoptes, a 100-eyed giant, to guard Io and prevent Zeus from visiting her. You know, Argus actually plays a little bit more of a role in the game than you may think. Let's go down this tiny rabbit hole for a second, shall we? To start off, some of you may be familiar with this Titan figure and not even know it. His name has made an appearance in a number of games, such as Halo 5, God of War, and Shadow of the Colossus, just to name a few. However, to the absolute hardcore Persona fan, you may also notice one more connection. For those who aren't aware, within the Persona universe, there exists a famous TV show called Phoenix Ranger Featherman R. It's a parody show of all the Super Sentai shows that exist in Japan, and the Super Sentai shows are where we get Power Rangers from here in North America. All of the characters in the show are named after a type of bird and a color. There's Red Hawk, Black Condor, etc. One of the Rangers, the Pink Ranger, is named Pink Argus. Argus after the bird, which is a type of pheasant, who got its name from the Titan. Why am I bringing this up? Well, first of all, Yukari and Ayo wear pink, so you could draw a really loose connection there. But more importantly, it's because in Persona 4 Arena Ultimax, Yukari makes her appearance wearing the pink Argus Ranger uniform. Of course, at this point, she's already in command of Isis, so the Io and Argus connection can't be made any further than this. And I don't think the game designers could have intended to make this connection either, since it's so roundabout. But I thought it would be a fun fact to mention. Anyway, back to our story. So now Io is held captive by Hera and guarded by the giant Argus. Zeus eventually sent Hermes to distract and slay Argus for him, freeing Io but still leaving her in her cow form. Hera, now more pissed than ever, decided to torture Io and sent a gadfly, a creature that makes its famous appearance in one other myth with Bellerophon and Pegasus, to continually sting her forever, driving Io to wander the world without being able to rest. On her painful journey, Io crossed the path between Propontis and the Black Sea, thus giving it its name Ox Passage, even though technically a heifer isn't an ox really, where she met Prometheus, the titan who had been chained onto a rock on Mount Caucasus by Zeus as punishment for stealing fire from Mount Olympus and giving it to mankind. It was here that Prometheus provided Io with some comfort, informing her that she would soon be restored to human form and become the ancestress of one of the greatest and most well-known heroes of all time, Heracles, also known as Hercules. But of course the gadfly was still pursuing her, so Io eventually left Prometheus to his fate and continued her journey. Eventually, Io found herself across the Ionian Sea in Egypt, where Zeus finally restored her to her human form at last. And if you were wondering, yes, as far as we know, the Ionian Sea gets its name from Io herself since she swam across it. It was in Egypt that Io gave birth to one of Zeus's sons, Epiphus, and a daughter, Chiroessa. So we can assume that somewhere in the cow madness, Zeus was actually able to get with Io after all. Later, Io went on to marry the Egyptian king Telegonus, where she apparently had more kids and lived out the rest of her days happily. This marks the end of Io's story, but there is still more to talk about regarding her concept art in Persona 3, the reasoning behind why she fits into the Lover's Arcana, as well as her link to Yukari. Io's design in Persona 3 is heavily based on the mythology that she comes from, with some noticeable influences from her human host Yukari, like the pink-colored outfit they both share. The reason that she appears chained to a cow head is a direct call back to her mythos, being that she was trapped as a cow for so long. Within the Megami Tensei Wikia, there's also mention of the fact that Io's eyes are closed to represent Yukari's own desire to not acknowledge her past. As mentioned before, Yukari and Io are part of the Lover's Arcana. According to Wikipedia, in some traditions, the Lover's card represents relationships. Its appearance in a reading can indicate some decision about an existing relationship, a temptation of the heart, or a choice of potential partners. The Lovers doesn't have to be restricted to matters of the heart, however. It can also represent choices, particularly in a situation where there's a fork in the road. A person being presented with an incredibly important choice and being given only one of two options to take. It can also represent sacrifice. For example, a bachelor or a bachelorette's lifestyle may be sacrificed in order for a relationship to be gained, or vice versa. Or one potential partner may be chosen while another is turned down. The card can also represent strain, stress, or pressure on the person who is making the choice, as whatever the choice made will have lasting ramifications for the rest of that person's life, whether that be for better or for worse. Yukari represents both the relationship and the choice meanings of the Lover's Arcana. Her social link story is driven by her broken relationship with her mother and the choice she has on whether or not to mend that relationship. And, according to the Megami Tensei wiki, the name Yukari in Japanese can mean affinity, which means a natural attraction to someone or something. This could symbolize how she is the first person to open up to the protagonist and form a connection with him, as well as serve as a potential love interest. The Megami Tensei Wikia has fantastic reasoning as to why Io was specifically linked with Yukari. Both were saddled with heavy burdens inadvertently caused by their fathers. They were abandoned, found themselves at a crossroads in the middle of their journeys, but ultimately found it within themselves to continue marching forward and finally fix the problems left for them. And Io also shares loose ties to Yukari's final persona, Isis, as she found the answers she needed in Egypt, the birthplace of Isis's mythology. Wait, what was that about Isis? You heard right. In a future video, we'll be covering Isis and briefly touching upon her relation with Io. This video was produced by me. All facts on the mythology were gleaned from the internet and further clarified with help from my friend AstroGeek, who is much more well-versed on Greek and Roman mythology than I am. I am always looking for lyric-free music and sound effects that I can play on my videos and my upcoming podcast. If you're a musician that would like their music used in any one of my projects, please get in touch with me. My email is roderickdevelops@gmail.com. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. I hope so much that you enjoyed the first episode of the Compendium. If you loved the video and would like to see more, or if you feel like there's more I could have said or some important fact that I left out, please leave me a comment below and give me a like. I'm always aiming to improve and give you the best content that I can. Until next time, friends.